Okay, it is 7 o'clock, and I am calling to order the meeting of the San Leandro City Council. Today is Monday, April 20th, 2026. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So at this point in time, Madam Clerk, would you please take roll?
Council Member James Aguilar.
Present.
Council Member Victor Aguilar is absent. Council Member Bolt.
Present.
Council Member Bowen.
Present.
Council Member Simon.
Present.
Vice Mayor Viveros Walton.
Present.
And Mayor Gonzalez.
Present. The City of San Leandro conducts early meetings to fulfill its mandate, and discriminatory statements or conduct that would potentially violate the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964 and or the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, California Penal Code Sections 403 or 415 are per se disruptive to a meeting and will not be tolerated. Please see the City Council Handbook and City Council Meeting Rules of Decorum for more information. Madam Clerk, your announcement, please.
If you would like to make a public comment during the meeting, you can do so in person or via Zoom. If you are present at the meeting, please complete a speaker card and submit it to the city clerk before the item is presented, then wait for public comment on that item to be called. If you wish to participate in public comment via Zoom, you can use the Raise Your Hand tool when the item is called. During the public comment session, speakers will be invited to speak and will have a set time to share their comments. A countdown timer will appear for their convenience, and when the time is up, the microphone will be muted. All raised hands outside of public comment will be lowered to avoid confusion. Once public comment is opened, hands may be raised to speak. There will be a 30-minute window for public comments, which will take place under Item 7, Public Comments, as per the published agenda. After this time is up, the City Council will proceed with the rest of the meeting's agenda. If you have not had the opportunity to speak during the initial 30-minute period, there will be another chance to do so after item 12, City Council reports.
In addition, today we do have some translation services, both for Spanish and for Mandarin Cantonese, if I am correct. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we do have translators available. Our interpreters today are Spanish and Cantonese.
And Cantonese. And if I could please have the two translators come to the podium mic and make that announcement in Spanish and Cantonese. So please approach this mic right here. Thank you.
It appears my colleague, the Spanish interpreter, is on his way. He is negatively impacted by the storm, and so he is slightly late. Let me switch gear to Cantonese. 今晚呢個會議裏邊咧係有項目咧係似乎係呢個係我哋華人嘅市民可能會係關注嘅，咁所以咧就係市政府係請咗我本人亦都有一個係西語嘅翻譯員咧嚟到呢一度咧係幫助咧係大家咧係現場咧係你要表達意見嘅時候咧係可以幫大家係翻譯做係英語，等呢個市議會每一位市議員咧都知道你咩意思咁樣嚇。但係需要填一張卡嘅事先，咁咧就大家需要填張卡咧，就交俾呢個係書記官嚇，市書記官就係呢一度。咁咧就同埋咧係如果你需要中文翻譯嘅時，都喺交卡嘅時候咧，係俾呢個市書記官咧係知道咧你需要翻譯員嚇。我本人姓鄧，係唔該晒。
Thank you very much. Para los que hablan español, si van a utilizar los servicios de interpretación, rellenen una tarjeta de orador y comuníquese a la secretaria municipal que se presenta aquí, que necesita intérprete. Recuerde hacer pausas periódicas para que el intérprete pueda proporcionar una traducción precisa. Los oradores dispondrán 2 minutos para exponer sus comentarios y luego 2 adicionales para la traducción. Okay, at this point in time, we're going to move to item number 3, which is a report on closed session action taken.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. On item 3A, Tapia versus City of San Leandro, the council took action on the based on the following: by motion of Councilmember Bowen, seconded by Councilmember Simon, with all members voting 6 ayes, 0 noes, and 1 absent, to issue a 998 offer on item 3A, Tapia versus City of San Leandro, of between $70,000 and $80,000. More information will be forthcoming regarding this 998 offer. Thank you.
And then robust discussion on all items. At this point, recognition. So we have 2 recognitions today. We've got a proclamation to declare April 22nd as Earth Day, and we also have a mayoral award for kindness to Darby Curry and Jennifer Ramos. And so we will begin with that first. Please join me down front. Doing well? Yeah. Okay. So let's put this down for a second and make sure that these come to you individually. And do I have a reading copy here or anything like that? Okay. So let me just give a very short description. These young ladies, as part of their community service projects, come over here to the middle so that everybody can see you. So part of their activity was developing a community seed bank for the benefit of everyone in the community so that they could get access to seeds free of charge. It's this concept of giving back to the community with no recompense, just because they cared. So for your kindness, we have given you this award. Would you like to say a word or two? Certainly, you can say, we had a great project, or something like that. What do you think? There you go.
We had an amazing time building the seed library together. We had lots of donations from Evergreen Nursery.
I think my favorite part of our project was probably when some of our Girl Scouts helped us with picking sunflower seeds and getting donations and picking out seeds from the nursery. What was it called? Evergreen Nursery. Yeah.
That is excellent. So, San Leandro community, how do you feel about kindness? Someone's going to take a picture. Miss Forney. So in the city of San Leandro, we obviously celebrate Earth Day regularly now for many years, and we've got Maureen Forney, a former SLUSD instructor, teacher, union rep. What else do we want to say about you? Rabble rouser, cross-country coach. All this kind of stuff. So I'm going to let you hold that, and we're gonna read this and celebrate, and then I'll give you the mic and let you talk about whatever you want to talk about. She came to mind especially because of her great work in bringing Sun Day to San Leandro. We celebrated in September. Sun Day on, guess what day? Sunday in September. So thank you for having done that. But let's celebrate the Earth here for a little bit. 56 years ago, millions of Americans gathered across country as part of the Earth Day movement, joined by a common belief that we should prioritize the planet's well-being. And whereas we saw the passage that year of landmark legislation like the Environmental Protection Act, the Clean Water Act, and the Clean Air Act, for those of you that don't remember, Lake Erie literally caught on fire. So the world was in significant need of improvement to protect the environment. And whereas the global community continues to face challenges such as health and environmental issues, economic struggles, as well as food and water shortages, and whereas people, all people, regardless of race, gender, income, or geography, should have the right to a healthy, sustainable environment with opportunities for economic growth and for prosperity. And whereas we all are the caretakers of this planet and have the obligation to combat climate change and environmental degradation to preserve the Earth's beauty and resources. And whereas it is necessary and proper to broaden and diversify this global movement to maximize success. Now, therefore, I, Juan Gonzalez III, Mayor of the City of San Leandro, do hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2026 as Earth Day in the City of San Leandro and encourage all people in our city to support efforts that address climate change and environmental degradation, to champion green economy initiatives, and to encourage others to undertake similar actions.
Well, I accept this on behalf of many people that are in this room and also on behalf of Third Act, a nonprofit organization of elders of more than 100,000 people. San Leandro has been at this for a long time, a short list. And again, many people in this audience have been part of these successes and benchmarks over time. Was one of the first clean air cities. And we became that during the second Bush administration, I believe before 9/11. This city defeated an attempt to bring an oil train down the Capitol Corridor, and it was beaten back by this city as the first to say no, along with our school districts and our unions, saving our children from great hazards and dangers right through the middle of town. We adopted in San Leandro a socially responsible investment policy, a climate action plan, and that work has continued through Sunday 2025, and we thank you for your support of that. But for those of you who've done this work in the past, many of us have done this together, late hours, lots of emails, lots of meetings. And for those of you who have your loved ones, your little ones in your lap right now, for now and forevermore, let's protect, conserve, and build a world for our children together. Thank you.
At this point in time, we will move on to item number 5, consent calendar. Would council members like to pull any items from the consent calendar? Councilmember James Aguilar.
No, Mayor, no polls. I would like to move to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, first, hold on just a second, please. Excuse me for just a second. Okay, sorry for the confusion. Is there any item that someone would like to pull? Because I would like to just briefly discuss 5A. So I will have some questions on 5A. Let's see if we can avoid pulling it and just kind of initiate a discussion. So there's nothing else. So what I'm going to do at this point in time is I'm going to take public comment on this item to see if we've got any public comment on our consent calendar. Do we have any, Madam Clerk?
Mayor, we have not received any comment cards for the consent calendar. We do have one hand raised online.
Okay, so again, we are opening public comment in person If you have any public comment on the consent calendar, now is the time to speak. Seeing none, we will close public comment in person, move public comment, open it online.
Our first online speaker on the consent calendar is Douglas Spalding.
Good evening, council members. Happy rain day. I'm home sipping my apple juice before my surgical procedure tomorrow. 5A caught my attention. There's a lot of big ticket items on this consent calendar. I hope everyone did their due diligence, but I'm wondering, why are we paying 3 separate firms for on-call environmental evaluations, which to my mind means we don't have something specific in mind, but it's like 500,000 each. That's $1.5 million. Like, why are we spending all this money on this? Maybe hire one firm for $500,000 if it's really that necessary. But again, what is it they're doing? Secondly, I noticed that there's a lot of vehicles that are being purchased here. I understand some of them are very specialized with purposes, but the souped up pickup truck. I'm thinking, like, really? Can we not repair the old one? I mean, we're having inordinate financial difficulties, as people are many places, as I have in my own life. And one of the ways I cut back on expenses, I drive a used car, and then I buy another used car and I repair it in between. I think we need to take a little closer look at some of these things. I know something coming down a vehicle coming down the pike that's going to need replacement is the command and control center for the police, but actually they haven't had use of it for the last year, and they've been using their backup. So if the backup works good enough, why do we need to replace the bigger, badder, mobile home that they use for command? I just think we have to just say no sometimes. We have to tighten our belts a little bit here and there, and then it'll make things better.
Thank you, sir. Your time has elapsed. Mayor, that concludes our online comments.
Okay, at this point in time with the consent calendar, I will go ahead and pull item 5A. And happy to receive a motion for approval of the consent calendar with the exception of 5A, if council is open to that. Vice Mayor?
I don't want to pull the item, but I did want to thank the Rotary Club for their installation of the fitness court at Marina Park. Just wanted to pull that out as a thank you, but not necessarily pull it out of consent. So thank you.
And for the benefit of the public, we will be hearing from Rotary in 2 weeks. There's some exciting things happening. Councilmember Bowen.
Thank you. I had just queued into 1 second because I think Councilmember James Aguilar had made the motion, and then I also just wanted to give a shout out to the Rotary Club and the fine gentleman sitting in the front here representing them.
Excellent. So I'm going to come back to Councilmember James Aguilar. Are you fine amending your motion to approve the consent calendar without item 5A? Absolutely. Okay, and the seconder I have is Councilmember Bowen. I have a thumbs up, and I will interpret that as a second of the motion. So at this point in time, seeing no further discussion, please vote on the motion on the floor.
Councilmember Bolt, may we have your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. All votes are in. The motion for the consent calendar, except item 5A, passes with 6 ayes from Councilmember Simon, Bowen, Aguilar, James Aguilar, Mayor Gonzalez, and Vice Mayor Viveros Walton, with Councilmember Victor Aguilar absent.
Okay, and it's certainly the case that on all the equipment that we have just purchased, that we have delayed purchases of equipment for a while, and at some point you just have to replace things that don't work. But we certainly appreciate the focus of city staff on having equipment that works, and in some cases, purchasing equipment to lower our overall cost so that we can do things in-house. With respect to 5A, I'd like to begin, and I think it's Mr. Lee, is that correct? That's going to come in and share with us a little bit. The concerns that I had expressed as city manager is really the authority, less so having 3 consultants. That doesn't bother me. But the authority as written would be for up to $7.5 million of spend with no specific deliverables. So it's just kind of open-ended. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, Waylon Lee, the city's planning manager. The contract amounts are the maximum amount per consultant per fiscal year. The consultants will be used on an on-call basis based on specific development projects. These consultants would be used to support development applications where environmental review pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act is required. As council is aware, many development projects that come before you require analysis for compliance with the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act. And these consultants would perform the very technical work. And they would be used on an as-needed basis based on the development review that comes in. That doesn't require the city to spend $500,000 per consultant per year. It just provides the city the flexibility to use these firms to perform the work on an as-needed basis, paid for by the applicants that are submitting development proposals and would be not coming out of the city's general fund, but instead be paid out of paid by the applicants as part of their development application.
So do we have 100% cost recovery on this?
We do.
Okay. Any questions from council members? Okay, seeing no questions, I move that we adopt item 5A. Councilmember James Aguilar?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Gonzalez, second by James Aguilar. Seeing no further discussion, please vote.
Councilmember Bolt, may we have your vote, please?
Aye.
Thank you. All votes are in, and the motion carries with 6 ayes, and Councilmember Victor Aguilar is absent.
Thank you very much. At this point in time, we will go to city manager, city attorney reports if we have any. City manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members and community members. I have one announcement for today. This Earth Day, April 22nd, starting at 10 a.m., join us for an eye-opening tour of the city's wastewater treatment plant. Learn about how the water from homes and businesses gets treated so that it is safe to flow into the San Francisco Bay, as well as some of the sustainable practices that have been implemented and projected plans. Space is limited and registration is required. To register, please go to www.sanleandro.org/Earth Day Tour. And Mayor, that concludes my announcement.
Thank you. Definitely encourage members of the public to go. I've done the tour before, and there's some cool stuff that happens out there. You also probably saw a video that we put out regarding the wetland project, the basin where we are helping reduce nitrogenation in the bay to keep everybody safer. So for public comment, we are now taking public comment on items that are not on our agenda, but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. If we have anybody present to make a public comment on items not on the agenda, Madam Clerk, this would be the time.
Mayor, we have not received any comment cards regarding non-agenda matters, and we have one hand raised online.
Okay, so we have open public comment in person, are now closing. We will now in turn open online public comment.
The first online speaker is Douglas Spalding.
Thank you very much. I wanted to double back on the the news emanating from San Leandro, primarily the disturbing case of the violation of Mr. Shaquille Coleman's civil rights, wherein he was removed from the city of San Leandro and summarily dumped off in Oakland in December of 2024. And I appreciated the mayor's clarifying remarks that, you know, it had been investigated and indeed violated not only our kind of moral sensibility, but department policy. I wish that public statement had or that had been revealed much earlier than, you know, 18 months after the fact. And I wish that going forward we adopt some kind of understanding, if not policy, that while these are personnel matters and we can't talk about specific people and whatnot, you know, as a city we need to acknowledge when wrong has been done, when harm has been done, and what we're doing to ameliorate. Um, so now, given that it was a personnel matter, I think it's also quite disturbing that body camera footage was leaked to the media. And apparently, the source of the story was a former longtime president of the Police Officers Association and current officer in the department, Michael Oliveira. So it's a personnel matter. I can't really rightly say, or I can't rightly know, but I would sure hope that there's an investigation going on to how it is these leaks came about, especially so long after the matter happened, after there had been adjudication within the department and by the independent police auditor. It just, it's beyond my understanding how such a thing would happen. Thank you.
Your time has elapsed. Mayor, there are no more raised hands online.
So we'll close public comment online and move forward with our agenda to our public hearings. At this point in time, we are on our first public hearing with respect to item 8A as listed in detail in the agenda. We do have today Assistant Community Development Director Avalon Schultz presenting on this item. And Madam Clerk, if you could put 15 minutes on our clock, and it looks like you already did. Thank you, Rotary. We'll see you soon.
All right, is it working? All right, good evening, Council. Let me just get my presentation up, and on we go. So we're pleased tonight to present you with 4 related actions that will implement San Leandro's brand new rent program. This includes our fee structure, appropriating the budget for fiscal year 2027, authorizing a staffing plan, and aligning the rental registry filing deadline with the program launch. As a reminder, Council adopted the rental registry ordinance back in April 2025, then later amended it in October 2025 to shift the registration deadline so that we could get the software ready. The original point of the rental registry was to collect rent data to see if rent stabilization was necessary. But before we even launched the rent registry, the Council decided in December 2025 to provide us direction on a rent stabilization program, which was then later adopted in February 2026. And we have an effective date of January 1st, 2027 for the rent stabilization ordinance. That's context for tonight's actions. So these next 2 slides will look familiar. They are taken straight from the December 15th Council work session on the rent program, where Council provided direction to us to establish an enhanced enforcement option for the rent program with up to 6 FTEs, full-time equivalent staff. Council also directed staff to prepare for this to be a fully cost recovery program. The assumptions that were shared on December 15th for that cost recovery program included a one-time general fund loan of up to $2.2 million to get the program stood up, a tiered annual fee structure of up to $175 and $300 per unit per year, depending on whether it was partially regulated for rental registry only or fully regulated for rent stabilization, as well as a late penalty structure of up to 60 to 100% of the annual fee. including liens and special assessments to enforce. And we also laid out assumptions for staffing and program costs. So that is a refresher for some and new information for our newest council member. But this was direction provided back in December before the rent stabilization ordinance was adopted that led us to tonight's implementing steps. So everything shown here in black font is a refresher, just what we discussed back in December. The red highlights some new information for council's consideration. So tonight's actions would establish the program fees and late penalties. We now have a fee study from NBS, our consultant, to support the recommended fees. We would be establishing the new special revenue fund, so this program's budget would live outside of the general fund. And we would be appropriating funds for fiscal year 2027 to cover a full year of operations. The program would have up to 6 FTEs, although we should note only 5 are anticipated to be hired for fiscal year 2027. We'll get into those details later. And then the general fund loan details, we're sharing the interest rate proposed, which is new, 3.76% based on our portfolio return. And then another piece of new information and a request to council is that you consider aligning the program launch. So the entire rent program would launch in January of 2027, and we'll provide some recommendations on why staff recommends that. So the proposed rent program fee structure is based on the fee study by NBS to achieve the full cost recovery for program operations as directed by council. All rental registry units, which is approximately 9,500 units, would pay the $148 per unit per year. And this is the fiscal year 2027 rate shown. And then the rent stabilized units would also be subject to an additional $108 per unit per year fee for a combined fee of $256 for fiscal year 2027. We are also proposing petition fees at $472 for a fair return petition and $236 for a rent decrease petition. And this should be noted that these are not full cost recovery fees for those petitions. They would be more expensive to process, and the cost of that processing would come under the annual fee. But this does acknowledge the time to intake and process from an administrative standpoint those 2 applications. The fees that are presented are within the range of what we discussed in December. And I might have said, yes, December 2025, sorry. And then a tiered late penalty structure ranging from 25 to 50 to 100% would help to create escalating incentives for compliance. And we are proposing a first cycle administrative waiver, so staff can have discretion to address good faith efforts towards compliance if there's a property owner who was not in receipt of correspondence and has done their best effort to comply in a timely manner. And so the total projected annual revenue for fiscal year 2027 is approximately $2.1 million. The code does allow for a 50% pass-through of the rent stabilization fee, which is the second row of the table, the $108 fee. 50% of that could be passed through to tenants per our ordinance. So the budget for the fiscal year 2027 program totals approximately $2.23 million, and the largest line items are salaries and benefits at approximately $1.06 million. Legal consulting and software account for the next significant categories, and we should note that the legal costs do include the costs of third-party hearing officers for petitions, not just for legal support of the program. So that's a bucket of funds, not all going straight to one entity. And then the $125,000 shown here, that's the budget for furniture and fixtures, is the one program cost in year 1 that's not directly recoverable through program fees because there's an amortization process for that upfront investment. And so you will note that there is a gap between year 1 program revenue and program budget. That's essentially that $125,000. When we were last discussing program budget, council asked, can't you find a place within City Hall or city facilities to house this program? Why are you budgeting for lease payments? You'll notice there is no lease payment line item. We are working very hard to accommodate this program unit within City Hall. So that has been removed from the program budget. The general fund loan that is proposed, the details are shown on the right side of the slide. And as mentioned, that 3.76% interest rate is based on the December 2025 portfolio investment return. So if the general fund were parking this money in a portfolio and earning interest, the program would be paying the equivalent interest that the general fund reserves could have been earning, is the rationale that the finance team has used for this 3.76% proposed interest rate. And another note is that 25% of the total budget, or $550,000 a year, will be coming back to the general fund or special revenue funds to cover indirect costs, internal service charges, and loan interest. The terms of the loan are set up so that the new fund could pay it back in installments or in a lump sum when revenues are equivalent, so that it can be paid back. So this isn't necessarily set in quarterly or monthly repayments. There's a term of up to 6 years to pay it back, depending on how aggressive or how slow program revenues are realized. As directed in December, this program would have the 6 FTEs that were discussed, with 5 hired by the end of fiscal year 2027. And as council is aware, these are extremely high-touch programs with heavy volumes of calls and emails and in-person inquiries. Our team has been meeting with peer cities who run these programs to really understand the staffing needs and the day-to-day operational needs. And it's a very heavy-touch program. So we are very happy to report that our first program hire is with us actually here tonight, Nicholas Draper. And so our management analyst 2 position has been filled, and it's been a great relief just to have our first program staff here and ready. We have an accepted offer from our second position, the program specialist 2. They will be starting, unfortunately not May 1st, but mid-May. We've got a start date. And then the rest of the positions would be filled July 1 upon council authorization, with the exception of the admin assistant 2, which would be joining January 27, halfway through the fiscal year. And then the last program specialist is going to be joining us in fiscal year 28. And through that time, we'll also be really monitoring the necessary staffing levels. And so we definitely don't want to overstaff the program. So we will continually be making sure we're running this operation as leanly as we can. But we also are following council's direction to provide the full enforcement services and really have a robust program. So we can support property owners and tenants and all of the activity that will come from that. And so at full staffing, it's anticipated the staffing and benefits would be about $1.3 million annually. So the new information that we're sharing with you tonight is about the rent stabilization alignment with the rental registry deadline. And so the blue square it's different from the first timeline that I showed, in that we're proposing January 2027 be the launch for both aspects of this program. The staffing is combined. There are a lot of costs to the program that are combined. And so there's a lot of wisdom, and we think, in merging the launch so that the property owners and affected parties really understand what we're asking and have fewer, more consolidated touch points with the city. And so the main reason that we're proposing January alignment comes down to data relevance, business license alignment, and program readiness. And so the July 2026 date made sense at the time, but that data that we would be collecting would predate the rent stabilization ordinance by 6 months, making it of limited value for enforcement. And January, turns out, is also our annual business license renewal cycle. And so when property owners register with the city to be a business operating in San Leandro, they pay their renewal fee every January. And so we're anticipating there are going to be a large number of property owners who may not have business licenses and will also need to get a business license from the city. And January could be the month that they do their rental registry and their business license renewal. And then the program readiness, while we are definitely on track to launch the software in July, as is currently the deadline, it doesn't leave a very long runway to train up property owners and to really get out there and educate and make it an easy path to compliance. And so by providing that additional window from between when the software is ready to where we actually need people to register, the additional 6 months would really be an engagement, outreach, training, hand-holding time, which we think could have great value to get as much compliance as possible at the start of the program. And so, just comparing side by side the value of January versus July, our team felt we would be remiss not to bring up the opportunity tonight to say that we really do think January is preferred for data collection, alignment, administrative efficiency. And so while it might sound like a delay, we really think this is a value and makes sense for the ongoing program that we're getting off the ground. And so we are pleased to bring this set of implementation steps back to you tonight. Again, the new information is highlighted in red. Everything else is what was decided back at the end of the last year when we were moving forward with the program design. And so there's a resolution before you and an ordinance. The resolution would establish the fees, set up the program budget, appropriate funds, approve the positions, and authorize the general fund loan with the terms that were described. And then the ordinance, as we just went over with the program launch alignment, that would actually amend the Muni Code. And so I'm available, our team's available tonight for any questions. And then we also have NBS on the line if there are any technical questions about the fee study. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. At this point in time, we will go to council members for clarifying questions. Councilmember Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the staff for working on this. Really appreciate the explanation and the focus on making the general fund whole. Can you clarify what safeguards are in place so that in like the 3 to 6 year window that we have for the repayment that it does get repaid?
Yes, our model really looks at conservative estimates in terms of number of units we can count on coming in, looking at all the known costs that we can estimate. And I think the most important factor that we wanted to disclose to council had to do with willingness to place special assessments annually when we do the lien list for accounts that have not paid. So that mechanism is very essential to recouping revenue that makes this program not a burden to the general fund. So we've modeled and we have a conservative and more aggressive modeling, and that's where the 3 to 6 year timeframe came in.
Thank you. And then in regards to a burden, I appreciate the effort that the council and staff have made towards the rent registry, because the more information that we have, the more effective these programs can be. And so in terms of outreach and support to all of the landlords in San Leandro, but in particular our mom and pop landlord owners, like what is the plan to ensure that there is going to be enough information and enough time and support for everybody to be able to participate and not be burdened by these additional fees, especially during these rather difficult economic times?
Yes, the proposed alignment for a January 2027 launch will provide, I think, much more time to work with the smaller property owners to really help them understand the software and walk them through the registration process, which we think will be very valuable. And then in our budget, both for this current fiscal year startup and for fiscal year 2027, we're accounting for translation and workshops and community CBOs that can help us spread the word and help advise property owners. So I think engagement and outreach is critical to the success of this program. It's not something you can just flip a switch. You're going to really have to be there to help people navigate. And then our team is also working on robust website content, flyers that are translated in multiple languages, demonstrations so people can learn how to do it themselves, and just looking at different ways to meet people where they're at.
I really appreciate you bringing up language accessibility, both on the forms, on the website, but also obviously to engage with folks, especially in our city. This month is actually National Language Accessibility Month, so that's fantastic. You didn't mention there, but I think we've talked in the past about working with the different nonprofits we have in San Leandro that do really cater to language-specific residents in the community, so encourage that collaboration. The other thing that we've often talked about is the launch of a new program, and obviously, you know, we're thinking big picture. We want to make this really successful, but in terms of what metrics we have in place and KPIs, like what are we actually going to be measuring so that it's going to be successful, so that when it comes back the year after launch, we know, like, you know, this is the best course and also the most effective way to be able to run this program.
Yeah, so I think some of the key indicators are volume. So we have the data on how many units exist that are rental units, and so we can compare registration volumes against the known quantity of units. That's one indicator of how successful we've been in capturing who we need to capture into the program. And then I think because the registry is collecting data, the software provider that we're working with can provide reporting out on various data that we're collecting on the market here. We'll be able to track in real time how rents are, what levels they're at, and we can look and see how that compares regionally, and looking at all of the other, you know, indicators that we were starting to look at when council was considering this program. And then I'm looking to Director Liao if there's any other performance indicators that we're anticipating bringing back to council, but we do have the notes from your direction during the adoption as well.
I would just add also probably compliance rate over time. As we've learned, it will take some years, but you know, we have a plan to get it repaid. But I think looking at the compliance level, we've seen other cities gradually over time get to, you know, 100% or close to that. So
Great. And then I just have one more question. Or do you want me to loop back? Okay. The last question was around the timeline. I think it makes sense to align the launch for all of the, you know, the reasons you noted in the staff report and then in the presentation today. And I'm really excited that we have new folks hired and ready to start, because I know that's one of the biggest factors that in terms of, you know, a delay. What does this mean for looking at the other items we have on the list in terms of housing policy, like the mobile home rent stabilization ordinance, for example, is going to be next on the list. And so if we move sort of the launch of the rent registry to the January of 2027, does that affect the staff work or starting to think about the next item?
It wouldn't affect it beyond what was presented at the council retreat, because we are hiring a separate team to launch this program and work on this program. We still have our other staff that are focused on other housing issues. So no additional delays besides what was already discussed would be entailed based on this change tonight. The push will remain to get the software ready by July. It's just that outreach that the rent program team will be doing provides that additional runway.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Councilmember James Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Schultz, for your presentation. And forgive me for my catch-up questions, because I have a couple with regard to staffing and capacity in specific. What happens operationally if we underhire or we face any delays in recruitment? I'll tackle that question first.
Yes, we've already had some delays in recruitment, and so we do have within our roughly 30 FTE team in community development a great set of folks who can kind of pitch hit and get in there and help out. So that's what we've been doing in the meantime. So we're feeling confident about the recruitments that we've outlined, and these dates are adjusted based on some of the recruitment challenges that we faced early on. So not too concerned there, but I think we are able to supplement within our existing staff group to the extent necessary, but it's not a long-term solution. But for a short period, we're willing to, you know, pull in where we need resources to get the program launched.
Okay, totally. That makes sense, and I think that kind of answers my second question: is there flexibility to scale up and down depending on the demand of the program as we see it in 27?
Absolutely. And we've seen our peer cities do that as well. And I think that's why you're seeing our staggered hiring plan. And we're not looking to have all 6 positions seated in the first fiscal year of the program to really understand operationally whether and how the 6th position is necessary. I think based on volume, based on revenue, we'll have a better sense. Something I was remiss in not putting into the presentation that if I could share, we do anticipate doing another fee study before the end of fiscal year 2027. Since this is the first year of the program, we want to make sure that the fees are based on actuals once we have actual data. And so just like the staffing can be scaled, we anticipate other expenses will need to be reevaluated as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then my last question is more of a help for definition. Because when I see the first slide, or not the first slide, slide 3 that mentions the idea of enhanced enforcement, what does enhanced enforcement actually look like? Because that term is new to me.
Very good question, yes. So when council was considering adopting a rent cap, some models look at putting it on the books, but not really following through with collecting data or enforcing non-compliance. Some rules and regulations that are on the books could be civilly enforced. For example, the city may not be taking an active enforcement role. This program was directed to provide the eyes on the data, to look at compliance, to go out and get compliance. And so that requires more resources, more people to do that work.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate. And I mean, I'd be remiss to say that this is, I'm in full support. I think that this is a necessary step that we need to take to protect our renters. And so I appreciate the work that you've done. I appreciate the work that everybody hands-on has done with what we've been presented today. So that's all my questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Coming to Vice Mayor.
I just wanted to check if Councilmember Dillon wanted to chat. No, he's not on the queue. Okay, then I'll take my time. He's 3 hours ahead of us, so I wanted to be respectful of his time as well. Okay, so I'm actually going to dig down on the budget on slide 7. And first off, thank you to the housing team, the community development team for getting us here today. And welcome to the team, Mr. Draper. It's great to see a face here to the FTE that's on our budget. So welcome to the team. So I'm going to dig into slide 7 on the budget. So what is the difference? So what would be considered like operations? On the line item 6330 versus like indirect service costs, like I'm not quite understanding like what those budget lines mean in terms of actual, like what would that work look like?
Yes, so in an effort to simplify, some of the categories, our line item object codes are combined. So for you're asking about operations, the 5,000 to 6,000 series, we're talking about translation, transportation, training, subscriptions, postage and delivery, office supplies, forms, and business cards.
Okay. But translation is already on 5121.
Thank you. Yeah. So we pulled out translation, and the other ones I mentioned, I don't think we pulled those out to highlight specifically. Okay. So it's expenses that are not a service, typically.
And then may I ask on the loan interest? This is a fund from the general fund going to essentially the same organization. I don't quite know who to direct this question to, Mayor.
We'll start with City Manager, and then she can allocate it.
I'm specifically asking on is it a practice or a policy to when the city loans from the general fund to run a program? Is it a practice or a policy to have a loan interest payment?
It depends on the program. We've done it both ways. It can be a general fund program, but this being a new program with a revenue base, normally that's in its own fund. I'm trying to think off the top of my head of anything that's revenue based. Recreation is also something that's in the general fund, but I think for this specific program, it is more fitting that it's outside of the general fund.
Okay.
And I believe that there are other programs where there are loans at an interest rate.
Okay.
Inter-fund loans.
Okay, so this is not unique to this one. It's a policy and a practice. Okay.
It is a policy and a practice, but it's not all one way or the other, but the mayor's 100% correct. We do have, for example, we've done loans to the parking fund, we've done loans to the golf fund. That's just two off the top of my head because I was talking about them the other day.
Thank you. In terms of so now I'm going to the staffing plan on slide 8. So I see that the administrative assistant is in 1 FTE, but on the FY active is 0.5 in FY 27. So is 1 FTE, but is 0.5 on the FY active, fiscal year active column?
Yeah, so I could see the confusion there. The administrative assistant is going to be joining the program in fiscal year 2027. However, the budget reflects half a fiscal year for fiscal year 2027 because the start date is anticipated to be January 1, halfway through. The other positions for fiscal year 2027 have a July 1 start date. So it's a full year budgeted for that position. So
Okay,
it's just to highlight the half year.
So to be clear, that is not one admin position, one admin assistant position that is sharing their time between two programs. It is one full FTE dedicated to rent registry, rent stabilization, but it's only that it is billed half because they're hired midway through the fiscal year.
Yes, and they would be full the following fiscal year.
Okay, I understand. I will leave my questions there. I have more, but I'll come back.
Councilmember Simon, please.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question on the interest that you will be paying back to the general fund. If the city's portfolio performs better than the 3.76, do we have the ability to pay back at a higher rate?
The proposal tonight is a fixed 3.76% rate, not a variable rate based on the performance.
That's my question. Thank you.
And if someone can check for Councilmember Bolt, any hands? Okay, so no hand online. So I will proceed with a few questions of my own. The 3.76% portfolio return, did we consider using a risk-free rate for a duration of 6 years? Like, did we look at treasuries for 6 years out? I don't know who would know the answer to that. Is that finance? Okay, someone from finance. Did we look at using... No one from finance is here? Okay, so we're going to come down to Deputy City Manager, to Assistant City Manager. My apologies.
Thank you, Mayor. So when the Finance Department looked at this, they simply just looked at the rate of performance for the month of December 2026. So the answer to your question is no. They did not look at alternatives for bonds.
Thank you. Rent registry costing $1.4 million. When we adopted the rent registry, I do not remember the cost being anywhere nearly as $1.4 million. Was it $1.4 million in the presentations back then?
No. I think when the rental registry ordinance was adopted without rent stabilization, the numbers were smaller. In looking at the actual costs of running the combined program with the enforcement mechanism that we discussed in December, we realized that the actual costs that were attributable to all units could be significantly higher than what we originally had budgeted. We budgeted a 2-person team for just rental registry.
My recollection was approximately $500,000.
I think it was 650, but I
650.
think at the time, I think in the fall when the program started to integrate together, direction-wise, I think that's when we also messaged publicly that we would probably be evaluating them together for.
Okay, so I'll talk about that during my comments. The penalty for non-compliance, I think I'll come to legal counsel on this. Legally, is there something that limits the penalty that we can charge? So we've got a fee structure, just hypothetically, of $200. Is there something that limits how big the penalty can be for not paying your fee?
What we provided in the ordinance, Mayor, is in line with our current penalty structure in the municipal code. So we wanted to make it consistent, but there is growth if there is continued noncompliance that is slightly higher than other penalties within the municipal code.
So that's what we have in the current municipal code. My question is whether just suppose that this council wanted to say, hey, this is really important to us, and so if you don't comply, we're going to charge you a $500 penalty, as opposed to 25% of $200, which is $50 or $60, right? So that's a nominal fee. So suppose that we want to do $500 or $1,000 for noncompliance. Can we legally do that?
So then we fall back on whether there are specific provisions in the government code that would apply to this penalty fee. We did not find anything that specific. Then we go back then to reasonableness arguments, Mayor, and again, going back to the reasonableness, we compared it against the other penalties within the code to keep within this reasonableness argument so that if there were to be a challenge, remember that the fees themselves have to be Prop 26 compliant, so that they have to recover the city's costs, but not necessarily and cannot create a profit, if you will, over and above our costs in compliance with Prop 26.
Okay, so I'll offer comment on that separately. Scale up. So I heard that we can scale up or scale down. My general experience thus far in government is that scaling down isn't really a thing. So I was hoping that you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Yes, I mean, transparently, we are looking at a staggered hiring date for our FTEs for the programs to really understand that the final position is necessary. So when I say it could be scaled down, I think we're looking to ensure that we have the right program staffing that's sustainable based on the number of units, based on the level of service. The program cannot easily be scaled down on a whim, just more attuning it to the actual units and the actual volume, which will be knowable as the program launches.
And my last question is at the Air District, when we're dealing with expansion into a new program, we sometimes choose to use temporary workers, someone that's being hired for a 3-year period of time or a 5-year period of time. Is that something that we considered here as we were developing our modeling?
We looked into it. We also, we had a question about consultants, and I think for a program like this that's very high touch and impactful to the community, we found that to get the quality of staff that would really do the program justice, that the full-time positions made sense, which is what we're proposing. We've had experience with limited duration positions, and it can be hard to have the sustainability that you need to really see the impact.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, please.
I'm going to dig in now on the program fees, which is our current slide. So again, with my goal of making the implicit explicit, I just wanted to kind of ask some clarifying questions that we've discussed before. So apologies if it's redundant to the team, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. When I'm looking at the fees per unit and the estimated units, and I'm going to kind of base it as I'm a property owner, and I have 2 units. One unit that is not subject to rent stabilization, and one that is. So under that scenario, the total number of every rental unit in San Leandro, regardless of whether it is subject to rent stabilization, is under the 9,500. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so I'm the property owner, and one of my units is rent stabilized, right? So I have 2. One is not, one is. So I'm looking at the 256 number, right? So my second unit would be at a 256, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So under what scenario then would the second row fall under? If all units have to be registered and are stabilized. Well, I'm sorry, not all units are stabilized, like single family homes are not, but I guess I'm not quite understanding in what scenario the second column would be used. Like if I have a single family home that is.
It's used to get to the 256. So the 256 is the 148 plus the 108. So we would, to be more accurate, say for your first unit that is not rent stabilized, you're paying $148. For the second unit that is rent stabilized, you're paying $148 and $108. You're paying 2 separate fees. They happen to total 256, but you're paying fee 1 and fee 2. And we're just showing you the added amount to make it easy.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. And also, again, I know it's stated at the top, but for folks that are listening or may not be following and are not seeing the screen, 50% of the 108 is maybe passed through the tenants, or is it 50% of the 148 or 50% of 256?
It's 50% of the 108.
Only for units that are rent stabilized.
Correct.
Thank you. Those are all my questions on program fees. I'm trying to group them so that we're kind of going through themes. I will, since I have a little bit of time, I just wanted to say that I am supportive of the 6-month timeline extension to align the program launch for both. I am, and I'll save the rest for comments. I'll yield my time back to the chair.
Just confirming that we do not have a hand from Councilmember Milt. Okay. Since we've gone through our question phase, we're now going to move into opening our public hearing on this matter. The time is 2:08. It is 8:08, and we are opening the public hearing. So do we have members from the public who would like to address us as part of this hearing?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. We have received.
I'm sorry, if you could repeat that, please.
Not sure if this is coming through. We have received 5 comment cards from here in the room, and we currently have 3 hands raised online.
Okay, so we will have technology come and join us in the chamber so we can address your microphone. And separate from that, why don't we begin with the 5 people that would like to speak in person?
The first 3 speakers are Jennifer Rizzo, Carol Haberkos, and Craig Williams.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Rizzo, and I represent the California Apartment Association and San Leandro Rental Housing Providers. We appreciate the city's goal of supporting housing stability. However, we have serious concerns about the cost, structure, and long-term consequences of the proposed rent stabilization program. To begin, I have a number of concerns with the NBS fee analysis for this program. First, to be clear, this was not a program or budget analysis. NBS states their main reason for the study was to establish fees and to ensure fee recovery. So as fiscal stewards of the city of San Leandro, the council should be provided with a detailed analysis. Second, the proposed rental registry fees are significantly higher than originally presented. In 2005, during the October 15th and the April meetings, the staff presentation stated the rental registry fees would not exceed $100 per unit, and the council approved the rent registry ordinance with that information from staff. Now, after the rent registry has been approved, the proposed fee has increased to $148 per unit, along with the $256 per unit for the rent stabilized units. Third, I want to highlight that the fee analysis study determines the maximum permissible fee at 100% recovery. It states the city can adopt fees at or below full cost recovery amount, and I urge you to consider perhaps lower fees. Fourth, the fee study recommends that fees increase annually by at least CPI, and I believe this is flawed. The council passed rent control of 65% of CPI, and this creates an imbalance with fees rising with inflation, but rents increases being restricted below that level. So over time, that gap grows, and only way to manage that is through regular rent increases, simply to cover the program fees. And I'd like to also talk about the proposed budget. You look closely at the...
Thank you. Your time has elapsed. Our next three speakers are Carol Habercross, Craig Williams, and David Stark.
Mayor, staff. Okay, good evening, City Council, Mayor, staff. My name is Carol Habercross, and I'm speaking. I am so happy that this has passed. We have been working on this for so long, and you are helping so many members of the community. So I want to thank the City Council and staff for all they've done, and Tom Lau. This has been a while in the making. So this resolution is a starting point and are the building blocks to support and implement our rent stabilization ordinance, which has already been adopted on February 2nd, 2026. So I think the start date to move to January 1st, 2027 to align the program is a good idea. And I know the city is taking out a loan that will be repaid by the rent program fee revenues over time. The housing providers will be paying a fee to help pay for this. The renters will also be paying a fee. But the renters benefit from this because rent stabilization cannot go up more than 3% or 65% of CPI, whichever is lower. And the rent registry will hold housing providers accountable for reporting their units. I think this is clearly the honest and accountable way to run their businesses. Alameda and Berkeley already have these programs. I was a renter in Berkeley years ago, and I was protected. I felt safe, and the landlord was honest and accountable due to the rent program that Berkeley implemented. So I look forward for this happening in San Leandro, where renters can have the same comfort and assurance that they will have protection and have peace of mind. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three speakers are Craig Williams, David Stark, and Mike McGuire.
Hi, my name is Craig Williams. I'd like to thank the council for their work on this issue. You put a lot of time into this issue over many, many months. One thing, in terms of the fee, the petition to decrease rents, maybe we could do something with based on people's income. If it's limited income, we might be able to lower that fee. It would make sense to help out those tenants. I also have this idea for the positions that are available. You know, we have a problem with rent stabilization in that less than 5% of tenants are aware of this issue. And, you know, thinking about this, you know, it's almost as though, you know, we talk about redlining, this redlining issue has come up recently. The apartment buildings in San Leandro, it's almost like they have a red line around them because the San Leandro Times does not go to any of the buildings. None of the tenants get the political news of their local community. The most important, one of the most important issues that they face is rent stabilization. And the suggestion idea that I have is that, you know, maybe getting tenants a digital copy of San Leandro Times as part of this project. Also getting them the city manager's newsletter would also be worthwhile. And maybe also with some sort of page for tenants and even landlords to, you know, bring up news. But I wish you would consider that, to have somebody as a communication person as part of that staff. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three speakers are David Stark, Mike McGuire, and Mark Janowitz.
Good evening. I'm David Stark, representing the Bay East Association of Realtors, and I really appreciate the questions you're asking regarding the financial aspects of this program. I have a few more. What are the ongoing costs of this program, specifically pension liabilities? Since it looks like staff is intent on hiring full-time employees, I'm curious as to the ongoing, beyond the startup costs of the staff. What if the program fees don't cover the ongoing costs? Will you be cutting other programs to cover the commitments you've made to this program? Also, what is the current city budget deficit? So just a few questions there that hopefully maybe staff can answer. And then just a few observations that I think you and residents and tenants should understand about these staff, if I understand it correctly. These employees won't create a single new unit of rental housing. These employees will not preserve a single existing unit of rental housing. These employees will be implementing policies that have been documented to reduce the supply of rental housing. Now, I've been to this council chamber many times, and one would think that the Bay East Association of Realtors is solely focused on rental housing policies. We are not. We are very concerned about the infrastructure of this community, about public safety, about library services, about other programs that make this a desirable place to live, a desirable place to become a homeowner. We are very concerned about the impact funding this program will have on all those other things that we're also concerned about. And one final question: how much does it cost to replace a single unit of rental housing that could be lost?
Thank you. The next two speakers are Mike McGuire and Mark Janowitz.
Hi there. I applaud the council for following through on 2 years of staff work and passing the rent stabilization ordinance. Please don't render it meaningless by making it burdensome for either landlords or tenants to use it by charging excessive fees in addition to its more visible annual charge. Some of those fees are being considered tonight. By the way, as I look around San Leandro, I don't see landlords producing any new units of rental housing either. Developers do that. That's their job. Most that'll happen is you have a marginal unit of rental housing being on the market or off the market, but it's not really a widespread phenomenon. What we've gotten a chance to return to with the RSO is a stable local housing market where both landlords and tenants can economically plan intelligently for their future. We need to follow through with putting into a local ordinance a list of legitimate reasons for asking tenants to leave and limit evictions to those. This would tighten up the state law. Of course, landlords should help develop that list as they have wide experience as to what can go wrong in renting a property. Thank you.
Thank you. Then last speaker is Mark Janowitz.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor, staff. Thank you very much for all this hard work, really quite comprehensive. A couple of comments that I want to focus on in my brief time. It's very troublesome to have a fee of $238 for a rent reduction petition. No other jurisdiction, certainly in the Bay Area, has that. City of Alameda doesn't have it. Oakland doesn't charge for a petition. Berkeley doesn't charge for a petition. San Francisco doesn't charge for a petition. So that's got to go. It will only inhibit enforcement of broad public policy issues, the maintenance of well-maintained housing, and enforce, in fact, the fundamentals of the ordinance itself, which is to stabilize rents. So that is a very bad policy from the broader issue of enforcement and effectivity of this ordinance. Without precedent, certainly in the Bay Area, probably statewide that I'm aware of, there's no reason for that. I hate to say it, but at a minimum, if you're going to go there, you need to have some kind of fee waiver form so that persons of lower income can afford it. But without precedent in the Bay Area, there's no reason for us to have it. It's only a total of projected $6,600 anyway in the total cost of the budget. I want to also respond to the comment that this staff and this bureaucracy and this ordinance does nothing to preserve a single unit of affordable housing. It most certainly does at zero cost to the city. Over time, these rent stabilization ordinances create a stock of affordable rent-controlled units at not a penny's cost to the city. It is efficient, it is cost-effective, and it is sound public policy. That's what this bureaucracy, if you want to call it that, will do, is enforce this ordinance so that a broad range of housing becomes rent-stabilized, protected hopefully by just cause, and creates a stock of affordable housing over time. That's what this ordinance does. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, that concludes the cards here in the room.
Let's continue our public hearing online, please.
Our first online speaker is Douglas Spalding.
Thank you. Yeah, this reminds me of that famous poem of, what do teachers make? You should look it up on Google. But what will these employees do? What will they save? They will save renters in San Leandro from having to move out of town, from having to be stressed every damn month with whether they can make the rent or not. I am so appreciative to the city for doing all this work, and it certainly seems like a long distance race. I do support the fees. Note that the fees can be passed through and certainly will be passed through to tenants. But they're going to hit differently for tenants than they will for landlords. A tenant struggling from month to month is going to have a hard time absorbing, more than $100. Is it possible that it can be paid month by month back to the landlord? I think that's something that should be maybe structured in. I do want to say that the fee for the petitions, I'm just going to speak from the tenant side. To me, that's a recipe for recreating our rent review board that we have now that never hears any cases. It's going to deter people from making valid petitions where they need help. And as the previous speaker noted, it's really a minor part of the budget. San Leandro deserves a world-class housing stabilization program. Certainly feels like we have a world-class team like Peugeot running alongside the Tour de France with extra bicycles and champagne ready to go. So I'm sure we'll get a lot of bang for the 6 FTEs. I'm thinking maybe we won't need that 6th one. But the alignment doesn't make common sense to me. We need the 6 months in order to find out what we have.
Thank you, sir. Your time has it. Our next speaker is Amanda Chang.
Hi, good evening, council members. My name is Amanda Chang, and I'm a staff member at Urban Habitat. I'm very supportive of the rent stabilization ordinance and really applaud the city for all this thoughtful work that's been put into it. But I would like to share some concerns with the proposed rent program fees. First, we're concerned the ordinance allows half the rent program fee to be passed on to tenants. But the reason the city passed the rent stabilization ordinance in the first place was to protect tenants from rent increases they can't afford. And so adding new annual fees on top of the rent goes against the policy goals of the ordinance. And so I recommend the staff look into the city of Salinas and perhaps drafting alternative language in the ordinance and amending it to remove this provision. Salinas's rent stabilization ordinance, for example, states that a landlord may not recover any portion of the rent program fee or any associated late penalties from tenants. Secondly, I also urge that you not impose any fee on tenants to initiate the rent decrease petition. A fee of $236 is just egregious. Charging tenants any fee to file a petition creates a significant cost barrier for challenging illegal rent hikes. You know, it's like, imagine you got robbed, and then in order to file a police report, you had to pay a $236 fees to recoup any money that got stolen from you. It's just really prohibitive. And would make enforcement of this ordinance really difficult. And then, these tenant protections are meant to be consumer protections to make sure that the product people are purchasing, in this case, housing, is of good quality at a fair price. And, people say that they're providing housing, but I want to remind you that it is a product. And if people do not want to be in this business, they're always able to sell it to someone who is, maybe just wanting to live there themselves. So again, please take a look at the fee program, and I hope you make.
Thank you. The next speaker is Alvaro Ramos.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I just wanted to add that, today is a rainy day. And what I was taught in my family was to prepare for when rainy days come. And I think that, you do your best, and you try to come prepared. You try to prepare for when that day comes. And water is very appreciated. I know we have drought, but it's always best to be prepared for the surprise, the unpredictable. And so I think we have allowed too much instability from inequality. Housing is a perfect example of that. These rules help governments to get the situation under control. And I think there is a price to getting money, to getting rent money, and then the tax exemptions and tax cuts. There are benefit cuts that are leaving deadly budget shortfalls for household budgets. And especially the burden will fall on the renters the heaviest. Governments are in a position to step in and stabilize housing, not just, I think, to benefit everybody. End comment.
Thank you. The next online speaker is the phone number ending in the digits 941. If you have the phone number ending in the digits 941, you may now unmute yourself.
So hi, can you hear me now? This is Jen Adson.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I don't know how to do this phone thing, and my phone's not working very well, but of course I would have to call in tonight because I want to thank Ms. Viveros Walton for getting such a clear clarification of what the pass-through of the rent registry fee is for tenants, because the presentation was not clear. I heard Avalon say something about $50, but I think that's what I heard, is that 50% of $108 can be passed on to the tenant for fully stabilized units. Thank you for that, because I was totally enraged when I saw this. I still find the $236 fee for doing a rent reduction hearing to be, it's just not fair. And I won't be able to afford it. And I'm doing better than most people. But it needs to be reconsidered. And I don't know what NBS based this on, but nobody else charges money for this. $5, $15 if you want to make sure somebody's serious about it. That I think I can sell to tenants, but Tom knows, you all know, I do so much outreach for the city with the half of the population that is tenants, that you got to give me something to work with. Don't make it egregious. Don't make it designed to basically anger every tenant in town, because that is what I've had to deal with all weekend long, trying to talk to people about this. I beg you to think through this before you institute the fees that NBS said. Thank you. I can be done now.
Thank you. Mayor, that concludes our online raised hands as well.
It is 8:30 and I'm closing the public hearing. At this point in time, we will come back to council members for discussion of both our resolution. So we will begin with nobody wants to speak? Vice Mayor, we'll start with you.
Okay. So just a couple of comments that I want to kind of contextualize our conversation tonight. So at the direction of the Finance Committee and ultimately at the vote of the City Council, the $2.2 million that was the kind of higher end of the estimate is already included in the city budget. So at the direction of our council, it's built in already and baked into our current budget. And so I just wanted to kind of make that clear for both programs. Also to kind of contextualize, because I think for some of the folks who are kind of looking at this purely from the number of staff and the 2.1 million, we are looking at 16,000 units that need to be tracked, and also 9,500 of those are, 6,500 of those would be rent stabilized. And so we are looking at a total number of 16,000 units. And at a really conservative revenue of a 2-bedroom, 1-bath rent apartment in San Leandro, which is about $1,800, $1,850 a month, we're looking at an annual income of about $29.6 million a month. So we're looking at a team of 6 people running a $2 million budget to essentially oversee 16,000 units at $355 million a year. So when I think about and contextualize, and these are just rough numbers, and so when I contextualize and I look at the budget, the staffing plan and the budget, although it's a large number, we just want to make sure that that it is adequately staffed and adequately resourced to ensure that the program is implemented to the fidelity of the intention of this council. With that being said, I do want to, I have a couple of thoughts regarding the fair return petition increase and the petition for rent decrease. I think the estimated number of annual petitions here would be 20 for a rent increase petition and about 24 for a rent decrease petition. You know, it's 9,000 plus 5, or let's just round up. So it's 10,000 plus 6, so 16,000. And I'm thinking about whether we could put a moratorium on both of them. I don't feel comfortable doing on just one end, but putting a 1-year moratorium to actually see what this looks like on the first year of implementation and see how many petitions we have. I know that it's, you know, it's the first year, so we run the risk of a lot of petitions coming before the city as staff and the community and property owners and renters all kind of understand what this means in their day-to-day lives. But I'm struggling with with those fees, particularly for the rent decrease. And I'm just wondering if there's, and I think Councilmember Bowen talked about this a little bit, around having some sort of deferment of fees if you are low income. So if you qualify for the PG&E Care program, or if you're, we wouldn't verify income, but if they come ready with some sort of income verified program that that we can verify, like a PG&E Care program or something like that, for both landlords or property owners and tenants. So that we could kind of figure out and see if that's something that could be possible. So anyway, just to kind of close my comments, I just wanted to contextualize a little bit about stepping away from the 6 FTE 2.1 million and really contextualize just the number of units and the annual amounts of revenue that we're looking at, which I just wanted to provide that context, again, making the implicit explicit. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comment, I'll offer my comments at this time. Let's start with the rent registry. I'm very frustrated. I proposed a rent registry, and I was told that it was going to cost about $650,000. Now I come into this room and it says $1.4 million. To me, that's not acceptable. The rent registry costs what the rent registry costs. If rent stabilization and the ornaments that get hung on the tree because of rent stabilization make that whole process more expensive, so be it. But it has, it was very clear what we agreed to in terms of what the budget was. And so I think it has nothing to do with the registration process. And so I'm not happy to see that the fee basically double when we come in here for rent registry, because I just view that as a cost allocation game. Portfolio return. Portfolio return, we're tying up the city's money for somewhere probably an expected value of 5 to 6 years. If you invest today, as of this morning, in a T-bill rate, you will pay approximately 3.9% interest, or you will get a 3.9% return. It's 3.85 for a 5-year T-bill. 7 years, it's 4.05, something like that. And so a more appropriate rate of interest is not what happened in a very specific month. It's really the commitment that you are holding to tie up that money. And to be very direct, that's the government, U.S. government, best possible lending rate possible. And that to me is the bare minimum. Realistically, it should be probably at least 4, a little bit over 4. But 3.76 is simply too low. It doesn't make economic sense. When I look at the penalty, if we really want to drive compliance, we cannot threaten people with a $50 penalty. $50 penalties mean nothing. So I have no idea, and that's hence the question to legal counsel. If there's no legal restriction, it strikes me that the legal penalty for noncompliance should be at least $500 or $1,000, something that's material that encourages people to actually comply with what we've laid out. We could spend easily $200,000 advertising every single week in the San Leandro Times and the Daily Review in Chinese, Spanish, and English. We could buy social media ads, Facebook, and the like, and spend a lot of money and say you had no reason not to know. I believe that if we really want to drive compliance, we can drive compliance, and that it's unreasonable to expect that business people will not see information in one of the various media. We can hit WeChat groups. We can, if we really want to communicate with people in the city of San Leandro, we could send a letter on the back of a burro to every single house and let people know this property is under rent control. And we could do it for just a few $100,000. And so I'm very concerned that we have a compliance expectation that's low when in the modern era information can be gotten to people. There are companies that specialize in sending information to parcel owners. And so every single owner, even if it's a homeowner, could receive a letter in the city of San Leandro. There's only like 25,000 parcels in the city. And so we could just send it to everybody. And people could throw away the letter and it would be cheaper than perhaps some other methods. But so I think we need to go and drive compliance. And I don't think that the current penalty structure emphasizes that significantly. I am concerned about scaling up, scaling back. I think that once you create government infrastructure, it's very hard to scale it back. So I don't really see that happening. I am concerned about the passing on of these fees to tenants. So I would propose that none of the fee gets passed on to tenants. Just keep it simple. The amount of money at issue is really inconsequential. Big picture, my biggest frustration, I'll just keep pushing this. The whole point of the rent registry program was to make sure that we could collect market data. There is market data that says in the city of Oakland, rents are down over the last 2 to 3 years for studios, 1-bedroom apartments. I don't know about 2-bedroom apartments. If that's happening in Oakland, I find it surprising that it's not also happening in the city of San Leandro, but we haven't let the rent registry data play out. Now we're delaying further collecting that data, and that's very frustrating to me, especially since we're telling the public that it's now at twice the cost. So with that being said, I think everyone has spoken, and I'd be happy to take a motion. Vice Mayor.
So just to, so there's a couple of things that I took notes on. There are hold on, I was checking on the presentation for rent registry, but now I'm back on today's presentation. Okay, so there were a couple of kind of sticking points that folks mentioned. One of them, Mayor, you mentioned the fee pass, the 50%, that the ordinance allows for 50% of the fee to be passed to the property, to the renter. Are you proposing to amend the?
I see no reason why that should be passed along to renters. So I would be happy if that got taken out.
So I'm supportive of that. I'm just kind of wondering what the vehicle for that would be. Does that mean we need to bring back?
We'll come to legal counsel on that.
Yeah.
So as we've done in the past, Vice Mayor, if it's the council direction to not enforce but leave that in the ordinance, then the direction would be, the motion would be not to enforce it for a certain amount of time. And that would be one option that this council hasn't done in the past. It's certainly a possibility, or like you said, a moratorium on enforcement essentially has happened before.
So then the vehicle, just to be clear, the vehicle to do that would be to do a moratorium on the. I guess what I'm struggling with is that what we're talking today is the fee, but the ordinance talks about it allows for 50% of the fee to be passed to the tenant. So in my head, that's revising the ordinance, not the fee. So I'm just struggling to kind of.
So I'm gonna try to frame it. Let's start with under the Brown Act. Can we today discuss and/or we clearly discuss as we have, but can we provide guidance on the topic of the fee pass through to tenants, or would that have to come at another meeting?
You can certainly have that discussion and you can provide guidance, yes.
But that would be with respect to amending the RSO.
That is correct. Certainly, though, if the direction from the council and you took part of the motion or action is that the language would exist, but would the council direct staff not to enforce, or do you actually want to change the language in the ordinance, which would then require it to come back?
So my concern here would be that I know Councilmember Bolt is listening to us, but we don't have our full council tonight, and I would be hesitant to bring back to just even direct staff to bring it back without the discussion of the full board. But I'll just leave that there because it just sounds like it's a can of worms that I'm not necessarily ready to open tonight, at least not with all my colleagues present. The other thing that I had suggested, and it's I don't know how tenable it is to my colleagues, is to have a 1-year moratorium on the petition for rent decrease and the petition for rent increase. I think the estimate there is 20 a year for a petition to increase the rent and about 24 to decrease the rent. Or we could just eliminate the fee.
Yeah, I think, Vice Mayor, that to simplify, I think your second option would probably, keep it more simple to eliminate. We wouldn't necessarily have to put a moratorium for the first year on the fees, if that's the council's direction.
Okay, I'm sorry, I am not clear. So if you can just repeat what he is agreeing to.
So my original proposal was to have a 1-year moratorium on the rent increase and rent decrease petitions to just kind of see what it's like.
That's what I have in my notes.
On the fee itself, not to eliminate the fee, but just to have a moratorium on the fee until
charging the fee for that 1 year. And that's what we have agreement on. Just not from the council, but that's when you said your first option would be the better option. I was confused between the first and the second option. But all that matters to me as a chair is that that is what you're proposing.
Yes.
Thank you. But that's okay. We'll just come back to what's being proposed is this. What else?
And then Councilmember Bowen said something that I did not take a note on, and you were specifically, there was a component to it around provision or some fee related to exempting folks that were low income, and I believe it was property owners who were low income, but I don't want to speak for the council member, but I know she brought something up like that, and I did not take that note. That's all I have.
So
if there's consensus, I'm happy to make a motion after that.
We'll come to Councilman Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor. I have some questions around whether it's a moratorium or not, a fee on fair return rent increase petition or petition to rent decrease, because there's still an estimated cost, and the whole point of this too is to make the general fund whole. And so what would happen to those costs incurred if we do not charge a fee for it?
With permission to speak.
Please do.
I would suggest that for this first year, the fee model looked at a conservative, smaller number of petitions. So it's a very nominal amount of revenue. So I think we're proposing fees for adoption and inclusion in the master fee schedule. If the council so chooses to direct to only adopt certain of these fees and not adopt others, the fee study can still be accepted. And in the next fiscal year fee update, we'll have data to provide and more information. So I think the easiest approach would be to not adopt any fees for petition. They're free and included in the normal annual fee, which is what most cities do. And then we can provide that data in terms of the processing costs and the revenue opportunities. But because it's such a small amount in this fee model, that $15,000 is relatively negligible in the big picture. And so it's not at risk of hurting the general fund for this first program year. We can go in with more information next program year.
Okay, I appreciate that. And again, it's really because while we want this program to be effective and for to actually meet the goals that we have for it, but I want to make sure that we actually have the funding for it. And while you're right, $15,000 is a small amount relative to the $2,123,004. We've also just spent the last month and a half, 2 months on top of the last, I don't know how long, talking about very small amounts for lots of programs that are really impactful. So I just want to be really mindful of what we are trying to do, just because that does affect many other things. And I just want to remind us what we as a council decided we were going to do going forward in terms of fiscal responsibility. But I really appreciate the commitment to come back with the real numbers and the information so that we can make a more informed decision about it going forward and once we get the more detailed information.
Okay, Councilmember Simon, please.
Yeah, I support the concept of eliminating the fees to the renters, particularly the petition for rent decrease. The public commenter, one of the public commenters making the response or the comment, if you're being harmed, it's really hard to pay more money to correct that harm. So I really see this. So Rich, just to confirm, if we are to remove the fees for the renters, this has to come back to start over essentially where we started tonight?
No, what I'm hearing staff suggesting is that it would not be in the fee schedule. That would be brought back at a later time.
Yeah, the petition fees could just not be adopted tonight. That's simple. Just don't adopt them and they won't exist. But the pass-through, I think, is a separate matter that I heard was maybe up for a future agenda item to officially amend the ordinance to not have the pass-through for the normal annual fee. But we'll take direction on that.
So
is that clear?
Could you restate that? So there's two, we'll come back twice?
No. Once again, the pass-through that was just discussed, that's in the ordinance. And so we would have to come back and have I think the suggestion from Vice Mayor is to have a more fulsome discussion. But the other fees that would be going into the fee schedule, you can just take them out of the fee schedule and they would not be instituted or put into place because they would not exist within the adopted fee schedule that's before you.
Okay, and the other fees, just to confirm the other fees?
Those are in the ordinance themselves. That would require a different action.
Okay.
So to be clear, when you say other fees, you mean the pass-through of the fee to the tenant? Is that what you mean, 50% pass-through? Or what do you mean by the expression other fees?
Rich just said other fee. So I just wanted to confirm what you mean by other fees.
Well, we're in the context of what we're presenting tonight, all the other fees, assuming that they're still in the fee schedule, would be approved. You can take a fee out from there if you wish. That's what I think the staff would be fine with that, and that would be legally acceptable.
So for example, there's a $108 fee for a unit that's subject to the ordinance, the rent stabilization ordinance. That's a fee that's in there. And then there's a $148 for all rent registry. Those are part of a fee schedule. And what we have, I think, talked about is possibly, instead of having a moratorium on the rent decrease petition or the, what was the other one? Rent decrease petition or the fair return petition, that those fees would go to zero. Instead of doing a moratorium of some kind, you just take that 472, you scratch it out. You take the 236, you scratch it out, you make them zero.
Okay, so those two go to zero. and the other 3, we're saying pass that, take that away from the renter, but that has to come back.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, I support that. The other comment I want to make is the rate of return. I would agree that's not the best rate of return that we've shown at 3.76. I would agree with the mayor. We could get a better return through treasuries. Can we increase that interest rate that we pay ourselves back?
So I'll start with that. It's a legal question. So can we change that number tonight?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'll come next to Ms. Schultz.
The modeling for the payback period was based on this interest rate. So if the rate increases, the payback term may also need to increase. We have not modeled the specific interest rate you're mentioning, but the collective interest due would increase if the rate increases, and so we would just
You would need
don't
to
feel
adjust.
as confident about the exact 6-year term.
Correct. So somewhere, if the interest is higher that's collected, somewhere that has to come either through increased fees or through a longer term for repayment.
The interest was also an input to the budget. So the interest in the program budget, that's a line item, is based on this percentage, which we were just saying.
Anything else, Councilmember?
No other comments.
Okay, so I'm going to come to Councilmember James Aguilar next.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 comments, I guess, for council regarding my positioning, so I'll make it quick. I'm in support of the Vice Mayor's proposal for a moratorium on the increase and decrease petitions. And then, Mayor, I am also in support of your proposal to have a discussion at a later point, because I think the Vice Mayor made a good point about having more council here. On that 50%, because I do very much agree with you. None of that fee should be passed down to tenants, period. And so I'd like us to have further flesh out of that conversation in revisiting the ordinance at some point. But that's where I'll kind of keep it for now.
And then Councilmember Bolt, I think you have your hand up online.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'll start with the easy ones. The decrease and increase, I'm fine with what has been suggested already. I do have a question though about the pass-through. If that is, and I guess this would be to council, if the pass-through has to be in there, could we change the number and not make it 50%? And could we make it so that we can move forward with this? Let's make it $5.
So I think this is a legal question. I will confirm with a city attorney, but the ordinance is not on the agenda today. So that is that pass-through percentage, whether it's as a percentage or a dollar amount, is captured in the ordinance itself. So we can't change that today. But out of this may come direction to staff to address a concern that we have. Have I summarized that correctly, City Attorney?
You have summarized it correctly. The language of that proposed language is not before the council today.
And putting that aside does not affect how we can vote today. We can still vote on whatever we're going to vote on today.
Okay, so I support us not allowing pass-throughs and having us talk about this at a different time or agendize it so we can rediscuss this. But could this be answered tonight? What does that do to the timeline?
Okay, so I'm going to come to Assistant Director Schultz.
It sounds like there's been consensus about the January launch and providing that additional time to launch the program, which makes the fee question a bit less time sensitive. So we've heard some feedback about the interest rate and some concerns about the pass-through option. If the council wants to move the ordinance to change the registry timeline, perhaps we could come back to another meeting and bring some refreshed information for you along with an agendized ordinance change for consideration. That might make it a bit smoother. There's no pressure to adopt the fees tonight, especially if we're launching in January.
So if I'm hearing your feedback on what you've heard thus far correctly, it would be perfectly fine for us to say, yes, you have permission to delay the launch of rent registry. Other elements like what exactly do we charge could be delayed and it wouldn't stress staff.
That's correct.
Okay, but what you really want for us absolutely is, can we delay the launch?
That's correct. And I think one caveat is that we would like the budget authorization and we would like the FTE authorization so we can get to recruitment and launch right away. That would be great. The specific fees are less time sensitive. So if there's a way to keep us moving on staffing, that would be ideal. And we know the direction is to provide a cost recovery program.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is to just kind of try to facilitate an outcome here. And then, Vice Mayor, can you keep me honest and make sure that we're all kind of on the same page? So what I am going to propose is that we postpone some final decision on the precise fees. But you do have, I think, broad consensus around what fees, how to adjust the fees, particularly on the two petitions, taking those to zero for the time being, unless someone specifically wants moratorium instead of zero in the first pass. Okay, so we'll come back to any further discussion on this. But that's what I'm going to lay out as what I think is our starting point that you'll get the most votes on. And then the second thing is with respect to the interest rate. That goes into the fee calculation. Is that correct? Or that impacts your budgetary authority?
It is a line in the program budget, and it does then pass into the fee calculation.
Okay, so what I want to suggest, just as a starting point for any final refinement, is that this council give you budgetary authority that you have requested thus far, and that you come back with modeling on what a more, I'll call matched interest rate would be to match the term of the indebtedness. Not what our historical return is on 2-year T-bills or something like that, but if we're going to tie up money for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, what's an appropriate rate of return for that to cover term risk? And that you're also being given direction to to slow down implementation of rent registry. And the last one being that the council is giving you direction to, what was the last one? Giving you direction, on the rent stabilization ordinance 50% pass through, to bring that back to us. So those are the four things. So now I want to come back to my council colleagues and try to build consensus, and feel free to express any concerns that you might have. Councilmember Vedas Walton, or Vice Mayor, please.
I just wanted to tease apart a little bit around the decision point on the two petition fees. So I'm going to ask a question and then I'll have a comment after that. Do other cities have a petition fee both for fair return and rent decrease?
It's commonly included under the program. So most cities surveyed just have the annual fee.
So again, so now I'm going to ask to kind of tease out that decision point. Why not fold that into the fee as opposed to having a separate fee for both petitions, increase and decrease?
The upside of having a fee is that it can decrease unnecessary applications and people are really truly invested and ready to come prepared. But there is not an issue with folding it into the base fee. That's the common model. And we've heard a lot of feedback from the community and council tonight and would support that determination.
Okay. Thank you for that. Because I think it feels to me a little bit, actually, I won't add commentary to that. So I do want to approve I don't want to get rid of the fee per se, because that's what it costs, right? Because you have an independent, I mean, the model or the program that y'all have kind of mapped out for us today is that there's an independent person who will evaluate these claims and make a decision, right?
The program budget includes legal and third-party hearing officer costs. The line item for the petitions basically would just cover administrative intake. It does not cover the cost of hearing the petitions. So those were not full petition costs anyways.
Right, because that, okay, I understand. I would want to eliminate those two fees. I think that that's what I'm leaning towards, and just fold it into the program fee. It feels a little bit like nickel and diming. I think if that's the fee to run the program, it should include the full cost of the program. And then just putting myself in the shoes of property owners, I really don't want to delay this much further. I think folks are doing some financial projection and implementation, kind of thinking through what this would look like for different types of property owners. And I think there is also, you know, renters want to know what is 2027 going to look like in terms of the actual implementation of these two programs. So the only thing that I, you know, just based on our discussion, the only thing that may need to come back would be the 50% pass through of the fee. But I'm just wondering, like, what is the possible delta that it could be between the matched interest versus the 3.76, and is it? I'm just wondering, like, what the delta, and I know we don't have the modeling, so we don't really know. I'm just wondering if the juice is worth the squeeze in terms of waiting and bringing this back when we're already pushing this program 6 months out. And I think that there's just, there's a little bit of, you know, it's a new program, and when things are new, people just get a little bit edgy. And I think as the soonest we have clarity from this council to give direction, I think it puts everyone at ease. That is the universe that we will be dealing with. It provides clarity and direction to everyone, both property owners and renters and city staff. So I just, I think we're almost there. We're just kind of, you know, I think the main sticking point is the 2 petition fees. But I mean, I guess if we want to, if there is consensus that we want to delay this for another meeting or at a future date, I just really don't want to delay this even further.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a motion. I'm going to make a motion that we give budgetary authority for the amount requested by staff, and that we give them the reprieve that they've requested on the implementation of the rent registry program. That the other issues for which staff has said that there is not urgency, we bring those back as staff sees appropriate in a few weeks, a few months, whatever. Can I get a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, so I've got 2 seconds. I did happen to hear Councilman Bolt first, so I'll give him the second. With that, is there further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Councilmember Bolt.
Aye.
Thank you. All votes are in, and the motion carries with 6 yes votes and Councilmember Victor Aguilar being absent.
Okay, at this point in time, it is 9:09, and we will take a 10-minute break. We stand in recess.
are you? Good. Oh.
Okay, it is 9:19 and we are back in session. As promised, we're moving to our second public hearing, item 8B. And we do have Human Resources Manager Tiffany Johnston here to present.
Johnston, and I am the Human Resources Manager. In compliance with AB 2561, tonight I will be presenting on the city's vacancies, recruitment, and retention efforts. Today's presentation will begin with a brief overview of AB 2561, a breakdown of the city's vacancy rates, and finally, what the city is doing to address recruitment and retention efforts. This is a reminder of why we're conducting this public hearing today. AB 2561 was enacted in 2025 with a legislative intent to foster transparency within the public employment landscape. The law requires all public employers, including the city, to openly disclose information about current vacancies, recruitment strategies, and retention efforts. It also has a special caveat that if any bargaining group's vacancy rate reaches or exceeds 20%, they have the right to request further details. This information must be presented at a public hearing before the governing board each fiscal year prior to the adoption of the annual budget. There are various reasons the city experiences vacancies. Vacancies can occur if a new position is approved and is waiting to be filled. There are 2 vacancies because of this reason. Another possibility for a vacancy happens when an employee transfers or promotes within the agency. Promotions and transfers allow for staff to move up, which is positive for both employees and the organization. Over 10 FTE vacancies are due to promotions or transfers. The most common reason for a vacancy, however, is voluntary separation. Natural turnover can be because of resignations and retirements, which account for over 50% of the total vacancies. Employees do leave for other opportunities, perhaps with a different agency, leaving for private sector employment, finding a position closer to home, perhaps moving out of state, or due to another personal reason. Finally, a vacancy can occur due to an involuntary separation, which is usually when an employee does not successfully pass probation. There are 8.9 FTE vacancies due to this. As of March 30th, 2026, the city has 48.5 full-time equivalent positions vacant. This includes all budgeted positions except non-rep part-time positions such as interns or seasonal recreation staff. This is a breakdown by bargaining group of the number of vacancies. Overall, the city's current vacancy rate is 11.6%. For reference, last year we presented a vacancy rate of 14.7%. There are 48.5 vacancies out of a total 419.7 budgeted FTE. The San Leandro Police Officers Association has 19 vacancies amongst police officers and sergeants. I will present more information on police positions in a separate slide. The San Leandro Police Management Association has 1 vacancy amongst police lieutenants, police captains, and assistant police chief. We have 1 vacancy in this group. In the San Leandro Management Organization, there are 2 vacancies. Our largest employee group is the San Leandro City Employees Association and has 25.5 vacancies. Among confidential HR, city clerk, and the city manager's office support staff, there is 1 vacancy. Finally, we are fully staffed at our non-represented executive level. This slide shows the breakdown of vacancies by department. The police department has the highest number of vacancies. Police officer and public safety dispatchers remain hard to fill positions. Last year, the Human Resources Department had the highest vacancy rate, and now we have 0, which just highlights how positions ebb and flow. This is a breakdown by bargaining group of those hired in calendar year 2025. We completed 87 recruitments, which yielded 74 hires and 7 promotions. Staff is continually finding ways to streamline the recruitment process to make it more efficient while maintaining a focus on the candidate experience. On average, it takes 12 to 14 weeks from recruitment to hire. In order to reach those candidates, the city employs several ways to connect, including social media, local job boards, professional associations, as well as targeted advertisements. We have placed a high priority on employee recognition, which is critical to retention and morale. Thus, we have developed and/or refined opportunities for recognition, which include Employee of the Quarter and Employee of the Year awards and other appreciation events. Work-life balance is a key priority for both candidates and employees alike, so offering telework options, alternative 980 work schedules, and generous paid time off are a few ways we satisfy this need. Recruiting for police officers remains highly competitive. The Police Officers Association has a vacancy rate of 23.2%, which equates to 19 out of 82 positions vacant. All agencies are competing against each other to select and retain qualified candidates. We prioritize this recruitment by dedicating an HR analyst to partner with the police department's professional standards and training unit to focus on these recruitments to ensure daily screening of applications and weekly opportunities to interview. Often, recruiters will go to a testing facility that offers the necessary tests for police officers and do outreach there, which we found to be a successful way to connect with potential candidates. We advertise widely, both online and in person, at recruiting events and test sites. In 2025, we received nearly 400 applications for police officer and interviewed over 100 candidates. We successfully hired 13 officers. Of the 8 separations, 5 were resignations, 2 moved out of state, and 3 went to different agencies. 1 retired, and 2 were released. To summarize some of the key takeaways, the city actively recruits to fill vacant positions. The city proactively addresses vacancies using a multifaceted approach. We also prioritize employee engagement and other retention initiatives. This concludes my presentation on vacancies, recruitment, and retention efforts. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. At this point in time, we'll take council member questions. Checking to see if Councilmember Bolt has a question. Seeing none, what I'm going to do at this point in time is I'm going to go to our public hearing. You can rest for a little bit. We're going to open our public hearing. It is 9:28.
Mayor, we have not received any comment cards from here in the room, but we do have one hand raised online.
Please proceed online.
Our online speaker is Douglas Spalding.
Good evening, Council.
Mayor, the speaker has dropped off the call, and there are no other hands raised online. Completely dropped off the Zoom platform, yes.
So what I'm going to do is I am going to give that speaker the courtesy of approximately 30 seconds to get back on, because perhaps he inadvertently hit an exit or something like that. And we do have just a few minutes, so we'll give him the courtesy. And while we do that, seeing as we did not have any questions and we're still leaving the public hearing open, I will just remind council members that when we come back after I close the public hearing, I'll come to you for any discussion, further questions, or I will entertain a motion at that point in time. So have we seen Mr. Spalding rejoin the platform?
Mayor, he has not rejoined the call, no.
Okay, so at this point in time, I'm going to close the public hearing. The time right now is 9:30. Coming back to council members for discussion or a motion to adopt the resolution. Vice Mayor, please.
Making a motion to adopt the resolution.
Thank you. At this point, Councilmember James Aguilar.
Mayor, I'll second the Vice Mayor's motion.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, so just to be clear, there is not a resolution to accept the report? Okay, well, my apologies. That's what my agenda says, so let's not stress about it. But we have had our hearing. We've heard. Thank you for the report on all the fine work that you are doing to make sure. There was a statement that I was supposed to read, and I'll take the opportunity now to read that statement. So in accordance with the legislation, and thank you for advising us of this, bargaining groups were also given the opportunity to make a presentation before us today during the public hearing. However, no bargaining group has indicated interest in making a presentation at this hearing, and so that's why we proceeded in the course that we proceeded. But know that they do have that right and they do have that opportunity. Councilmember Simon, I come to you next.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question regarding the police vacancy, and I understand it's difficult to recruit and it's difficult to fill those positions, but I'm just curious, have we looked at outside contracts, how those impact our police vacancy? For example, the mental health response unit. In the budget process, we've reduced the budget to that program, yet the mental health response unit supports the police. So is that making it more difficult for us to fill our positions if we're reducing outside services that could help them?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Angela Avert, Police Chief. No, that is not impacting our ability to recruit and retain personnel. It is having those alternative resources for our police officers is great because it frees them up to do other public safety initiatives, right, to focus on those things. Our issue is not necessarily recruitment, it's retention. And so we are so far behind in trying to not only hire for people that have retired, but also hire for people that have left to go to other agencies, have left the profession altogether. So we're also trying to fill our vacancies while backfilling for people who have left the organization or who didn't pass probation or whatever. There's a myriad of reasons why. We have, a lot of interest in people that want to work here in San Leandro, which is great. It's just that the process takes so long. The background process, right? Sometimes people get hired by other police departments before we can pick them up. And so we have interest. That's not the issue, I think. We also have explored maybe hiring outside recruitment firms to assist in our efforts, but as you can imagine, those firms are very expensive. I think the best recruiters are the people in this room. The best recruiters are police officers and our staff. I personally have recruited at least 5 to 10 people. I mean, whether I'm in uniform or not, I'm always passing out my business card because I believe, that I need to practice what I preach, right? I really want to fill these vacancies. I want our police department to be fully staffed, and I know that we can get there. It's just very difficult, and it's not unique to San Leandro. Thank you.
So it's interesting because your mic, I thought your mic was on. Do you have it? There you go. Thank you. You are complete, correct? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so I think we are done with this item, and we will proceed to our next item on the agenda very quickly. Item number 9, presentations. There are no presentations scheduled or action items to be addressed, so that's item number 10. So we'll move to item number 11, council requests to schedule agenda items. And I believe, City Manager, that we do have one item today. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we received one item from Councilmember Simon.
Councilmember Simon, I will come to you.
Yes, I have one item. This item is to remove the 2 items of interest, the investigation reports from 2024 and 2025 and associated documents from the city's public records online website. This item, if approved by council, will not impact staff's progress on other high priority projects. Per the council handbook and past practice of these type of non-impact items, this item shall be added to the May 4th, 2026 council meeting or next available meeting.
Are there any council members with questions on this? Councilmember Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for administrative clarification, is this an urgent referral or is this just a referral to be considered in the next year since we just went through our retreat?
So I'll come to Councilmember Simon to address that. My apologies. Please proceed.
Okay. No, it is not an urgent referral. However, it is an item, as I have stated previously, it does not impact staff's progress on other high priority work. And by past practice, what has been done on council on several items, it can come before the council if it does not impact staff progress. Therefore, I've consulted with city attorney and city manager. This item can be added to May 4th or next available meeting.
Can I?
Please.
For clarification then, I am concerned that that rationale for why we can add something to an agenda could be problematic. I would also then entertain the notion of doing a referral myself to, for example, keep the discipline investigations and relevant information that is of interest to the public permanently on there as a testament to our city's commitment to our own integrity and discipline policy. So I am certainly not supportive of that. I'm afraid of the precedent that this sort of referral process is setting. I also believe that this item was potentially brought up at a last meeting and was referred to rules. And so I'm, again, really concerned about the roundabout ways that Councilmember Simon is, again, trying to bring this up.
So one thing that I'm going to be a little bit sensitive to here is that this is not an agendized item. So I think that we can ask some clarifying questions, such as whether it's an urgent referral. But I do want to be sensitive about extended discussions on this item. I'm going to come next to Vice Mayor.
Thank you. And what's the goal of removing it? What is your goal of removing the 2 disciplinary actions from the items of interest?
I would have to go back to stating we shouldn't be discussing this at this time. We can discuss this when it's on the agenda.
Was that not included in the item to the city manager?
This was filed.
So that's a question, the city manager.
This was filed by the deadline today.
So city manager, if you could address the vice mayor's question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I will just state what was provided to me, and this is all I received. The request was to remove the 2 items of interest, investigation reports from 2024 and 2025, and associated documents from the city's public records online website. This item, if approved by council, will not impact staff's progress on other high priority projects per the council handbook and past practices of these types of non-impact items. This item shall be added to the May 4th, 2026 council meeting or next available meeting. That was all I received on this item.
I understand. I'm not supportive of putting it on the May 4th agenda. I think it's not urgent. It wasn't stated in the email to the city manager and to the clerk the goal of why you want it removed or the why. So I'm not supportive.
Are there other council members that would like to ask questions on this item? So I have a de facto motion from Council Member Simon to place this on the May 4th agenda. Is there a second?
Just to clarify, this doesn't require a vote. There's other items from past practice that don't come before item 11. They just are put on. There's several that you've put on, I've put on one, and this is past practice. So this doesn't require a vote to be put onto the agenda.
So let's
I'd
explore.
ask the city attorney to confirm that, please.
So before we go there, because you have told the chair that the chair has put something on the next meeting, what are you referring to?
I said past practice.
No, but you said you. You looked at me and you said you. So are you saying that I, as mayor, have said I want something on the next agenda and I got it on the next agenda?
My understanding is that you've added items, so have I, to the council agenda that did not impact staff's progress on other high priority projects, so they were added.
So I'm asking you, what did the mayor add to the agenda that did not impact staff time and that was not discussed with the council?
I believe there was the Ava Energy came forward that wasn't approved by the council to be added, which was fine.
Did you look at the priority session data from a year ago?
There's another one as well. I'd have to refresh my memory, but there is another one.
Okay. This is a request to put something on a specific date. Our standard practice would be to take it to the work session. We just completed our priority session and we said none of the requested items would be handled this year. And so now you're asking for an exception to a council decision. So that's why I'm saying this requires a motion to circumvent the will of the council. The council has clearly stated, whenever that was in January or February, that we would not be proceeding with any of these referrals. You had already made this referral.
Just to clarify or to confirm, if it does not impact staff's progress, it can be brought to the agenda. It can be brought to, added to an agenda item.
It can be brought to the council because the council has already decided what the council will do this year from the priority session. And so you're asking to change what council has voted on.
No,
And so
I'm not
since we
asking that.
voted, well, but we voted, you presented this at the priority session, and we voted to do away with all the referrals. We voted as a body. And so now you're asking to sidestep what council has already given as direction. And so that's why I'm asking for a motion and a second, because you're asking to change what council has voted on.
I'd have to go back and see what was at the prior session. I don't recall that. However, I would like to ask the city attorney's opinion on the matter.
And what is the question? You're seeking his opinion to, his answer to what question?
The question is, per the rules, per the handbook, if it does not impact staff progress, can the item be added to the May 4th agenda or next available meeting? That is my question to the city attorney.
Okay, city attorney, please.
So thank you, Mayor. The the council handbook doesn't address that specifically. What I'm going to the mayor's point, is that under the Brown Act, which is supreme to the handbook, California Government Code Section 54954.2A3, is that what we're doing right now is that a member of the legislative body or the body itself, subject to rules or procedures of its own, may provide a reference to staff or other resources for factual information, request staff to report back to the body at a subsequent meeting concerning any matter, or take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. So that's what the Brown Act provides. It is a council choice then, direct staff to take action. You can take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. So that's what the mayor is attempting to do.
So may I go to Vice Mayor at this point in time, or would you like to continue?
The past practice, that's what I'd like to better understand. Besides the Ava Energy, I understood there was another item, I don't have it in front of me, that you have brought. And it was a valid item. It means fine to bring forward. If it doesn't impact staff, I got it. So I think it would be fair that if you've done it, I think others should be allowed to do it if it's not impacting staff. So I would ask that if it requires some time to figure that out, then I can do some research and figure that out. But I think we should be fair.
I agree. We should be fair. Coming to Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I wanted to highlight page 16 of our City Council member handbook, which talks about requests for future agenda items and urgent referrals. So I just wanted to highlight that in addition to the Brown Act, where we do have to have a vote of the majority or even a second, the process that we outlined for ourselves is to email the city manager, and it would be added to the city council priority list and then added to the planning retreat, which is what was done. And then we all voted to not add any more agenda items. There is, however, an urgent clause, right? So if there is an urgent matter that shall be prioritized, it needs a 2/3 majority vote. So it needs a vote of 5 of us on 5 members of the council. I don't think that this qualifies as an urgent item, and we already voted to not add any more items to our council priority list for this year. So I think both the Brown Act and our council handbook outlines the process to follow.
Okay, so at this point in time, I'm not hearing a second on a motion. So I will interpret that, unless my parliamentarian says otherwise, that the motion has died, requesting to place that on a future agenda of May 4th. Parliamentarian, do you disagree?
No, I do not disagree. I agree.
Okay. So with that, having no further items there, are there city council reports or calendars or announcements at this point in time? Beginning with Vice Mayor.
Just wanted to announce to the public that I will very sadly be missing the mayor's state of the city on the 28th. I will be traveling for work, and I am unable to attend, but really do encourage, and I'm sure the mayor will have has sent out an invitation along with the Chamber of Commerce and the city's social media outlets about our state of the city on the 28th. Best of luck, Mayor, and I'm sorry that I'm not able to be there. And then that's just my only absence in terms of a council event.
Thank you. Councilmember James Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to uplift really quick the Scholarship Foundation dinner last Thursday. Really good time, and appreciate you, Mayor Gonzalez, for the work that you put in, and City Attorney Pio Rota, thank you for what you did as well. It was overall just a lovely event. Great to see good people break bread with folks and have a good time. And I'm looking forward to the State of the City on the 28th. Excited to, again, see some people, hear from you, Mayor, and I'm just looking forward to being there on the 28th. That's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Just checking online for Councilmember Bolt. No hands, so I will wrap up very quickly on my end. Grateful for the City of San Leandro working with Tarani and the Boys and Girls Club to provide some mentoring to the Year Up interns. We as a city have taken dozens of Year Up interns over the last, I guess, 3 years. It's been a highly successful program, and grateful for the partnership with Year Up. And we had one of our own employees who joined me on the panel to talk about her wonderful experience here at the City of San Leandro and offer mentoring advice to some folks. Also, just highlighting that Scholarship Foundation was such a beautiful event, and very grateful for that. I also want to celebrate Arroyo High School Key Club. I think Councilmember Aguilar, you might have a connection there. Their Key Club, I had an opportunity to speak at the Key Club Gala on Sunday, and Arroyo High School Key Club was recognized as the Club of the Year. We've got a number of San Leandro students who attend Key Club and who are just worthy of celebration for all the great work that Key Club does in the city of San Leandro. The only other announcement that I will offer is Arbor Day. We have Arbor Day on this coming Friday at 10 a.m. And we've got flyers up. Check social media for the Rec and Park Department. We'll be doing tree planting. And it's a great opportunity to continue demonstrating our commitment to the environment. So with that, it is 9:51 and we are adjourned. Oh, look, Councilmember Bowen, you snuck in there. What is this? What's going on here? You're next.
I was just going to add, since you brought up the Key Club, and as a former Key Clubber, Kiwanis in San Leandro, who supports our Key Club, is having their community mixer at Fieldworks this Thursday from 5 to 8 o'clock. And so this is for anybody who's interested in Kiwanis and the work that they do, to just come and meet the group. And it's Fieldworks. It's going to be fun, and it's a great group of people.
Excellent. Okay, so it is 9:52, and we are adjourned.